Well, hi guys, it's that time. It's our Bible teaching snippet of the day. Well, today I'm going to go ahead and just talk a little bit more about my video that I did yesterday. I talked about how I was at a family outing. It was my husband's family, by the way. So one of his cousins came over, and she had heard through the grapevine that I had become a vegan, and she assumed that it was due to health issues and was kind of trying to, in a nice way, find out what was supposed to be wrong with me. But I did have the opportunity to tell her that I didn't have any health issues and that, yes, a plant-based diet, going plant-based, will cure many, many diseases. Folks with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart disease, it will turn that around and reverse it. People can get off of their prescription meds and pain medicine, okay? It's known to cure cancer, diabetes, as well as dementia. So there are so many benefits to living according to Genesis 1:29, okay? Now, just get a backdrop here. I've been in the healing ministry, if you want to call it that, where I've been laying hands on people for them to be healed, raising people from the dead, teaching healing, traveling, and doing all of that. I've been doing that for getting close to 11 years, okay? I have been to St. Jude Hospital here in Memphis. I have been to Le Bonheur Hospital. And guys, I would love to never, ever, ever, ever see a little baby or little kid hooked up on all the machines and all the tubes, and the family broken, and the child dies, and they want to know why God let this happen, okay? So let me give you a quote real quick. This is by Rachel Carson, but when I read it, it just went all through my spirit. Knowing what I do, there would be no future peace for me if I kept silent. And I can tell you, in the healing ministry, knowing the things that I know now about our health and the poison we're putting in our bodies through our food choices, eating animals, and eating or consuming the byproducts, milk, eggs, and cheese. Guys, we are putting poison in our bodies, and that's why so many people have so many lifetime ongoing illnesses, diseases, that forces them to be on prescription meds and pain medicine, okay? So I wanted to throw that in today. Knowing what I know now, there would be no future peace for Faye if I kept silent about the things that I now know because of being in the healing ministry and watching people get healed, get sick, die, and all of that. I just need people to know that, yes, you are actually in control, for the most part, of your health and well-being. And it starts with taking responsibility for the choices of food that the things you call food and put in your body. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to refer to an article that I wrote, and I do write articles. I'll probably put all of it together in a book because I've done extensive research for over 3 years. I call it investigative research and in-depth studying for a biblical basis of being vegan, plant-based. I know that's odd, isn't it? Because in America, we're never taught about these things. So let me set in and see how far I can get, because yesterday I talked about Genesis chapter 9, verse 3, okay? And I'm going to be using this print off, okay? It's Genesis chapter 9, verse 3 through verse 17, okay? But let me get started, and I'm just going to read a little bit of the article, and that'll keep me on a good timeline, okay? Maybe I won't wander off and go too long today. So let me start reading. People tend to quote Genesis 9:3 and say, see right here, God says everything is food and we can eat the animals. Every living thing is food, and we can eat the animals. Let me read to you what some translations say. This is one of them. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. As the green herb, I give you all. Now, common sense tells us that we must be taking this verse out of context, since no one eats every moving thing that lives. Every moving thing that lives would certainly include other human beings. Okay, so again, common sense tells us that God did not tell Noah nor mankind to make everything that moves to be food to eat it. Okay. What I want to do now is I want to look at what the literal Hebrew says and the literal Greek. Yes, there is a Greek version of the Old Testament. It's called the Greek Septuagint, okay? And they do differ quite a bit. But yes, we have the Hebrew manuscripts and we have the Greek manuscripts. So here's what the verse actually says in a literal translation. This is Young's literal. Every creeping thing that is alive, to you it is food, as the green herb I have given to you the whole. Okay. Now here's another one. This is Julia Smith's translation. She's the first woman that has ever, the first and only woman that has translated the entire Bible into English. Here we go. Every creeping thing which lives shall be food to you as the green herb. I give you all things. Okay. And this is the one that I'm going to read from today for the rest of this teaching. And this is the Exegesis Companion Bible. Here we go. Every living creeper is for you, even as the green herb, I give you all. Now, let's take a look, a close look at this verse. And here's what I wrote in the article. Sometimes recognizing the words that are not used is as important, sometimes more important, as the words that are being used. Now, verse 3 does not have the word nephesh, number 5315 in the Strong's, which means soul, creature, or animal, okay? Nor does it have the word basar, number 1320, which means flesh, the flesh of animals or the flesh of humans. Neither one of those words are in verse 3. But both words, nephesh and basar, are used multiple times in context when we're reading Genesis 9:3 all the way down to verse 17. Nephesh is used 7 times. Nephesh meaning a soul, used 7 times, and basar meaning flesh was used 6 times. But neither one of these words are used in verse 3. Okay. Now let's look at a word that is used all the way throughout in verse 3 all the way down through verse 17. Okay. That word is chahay, okay, C-H-A-Y, chahay, and it is number 2416. And what this word means is living, alive, moving. It is found 8 times in these passages. The word chahay is used as an adjective to describe anything that is alive or moving. That includes the green vegetation, flowing water, as well as a human and an animal. And in my article it says see attached definition. So I'm going to show you that. Here is a printout of this word chahay, okay? And if you notice right here, I've got it highlighted. One of the meanings of that is the green vegetation, okay? It means to be alive, living, and it also means green vegetation. Okay, let me keep going here. I'm trying to stay on track here. There's lots of little bunny trails I want to go down, but I'm going to try my best to just stay here. Okay, so our misunderstanding of the word chahay in verse 3 has caused us to misread the phrase, every moving thing, to be animals. What we miss is that nowhere in all of these passages, verse 9:3 through 9:17, does God use the phrase every moving thing to describe an animal, but instead God uses a much clearer, definitive phrase, every living being, every living soul, all flesh, when he refers to animals and to humans. Okay. What I'm trying to show you is verse 3 where it says every creeping thing or every moving thing. God was actually saying every creeping vine, every creeping vegetation is now included. You're going to see that growing on the ground, Noah. There's going to be vines and stuff growing, and you can eat from those. Every creeping thing, he was talking about vegetation. Because all the way through, down to verse 17, when he talks about an animal, he uses a completely different phrase. He doesn't say creeping thing. Okay, I'm going to hold this sheet up and show you one more time. Here I've got it highlighted in yellow where it says every living creeper. That's what this translation says. Every creeping thing is also the way it's translated. But if you'll notice, you will see when he's talking about animals, okay, when he's talking about animals, he uses the word flesh and soul. Okay. I've got it highlighted in blue. We've got flesh with the soul in verse 4, and we've got all flesh down in verse 15, 2 different times, and then all flesh again in verse 16, and all flesh again in verse 17. Now, if we look at what I've highlighted in pink, we're going to see that he's referring to living things too. Every live being, and that's 3 times. Then we see every living soul. And every living soul, that phrase, every living soul, every single time he's talking about an animal. So here's the question. If he has used every living soul to describe the animals 4 times in these passages to say, Noah, all of mankind, man, Noah, you are in my covenant, but every living soul with flesh is in my covenant. And many translations say, and every creature. They understand that God is talking about animals here. So every living soul means animals. Every living creeper, that phrase does not mean a living soul, okay, a living soul with flesh. A living soul with flesh is described all down through the rest of these scriptures, and God is very, very clear about what is included in his covenant, every living soul and all flesh. What's missing in Genesis chapter 9, verse 3 is flesh, living soul. Instead, he says every creeping thing, and he's talking about the vegetation. Okay, let me go ahead and get back to this article and see if I can make it a little bit clearer. So I'll repeat this. God does not use but one time every moving thing or every creeping thing, only one time in Genesis 9:3. But we see multiple times where God gets very specific and more definitive in the way that he speaks. Every living being, every living soul, all flesh, when he refers to the animals. Now, to be faithful stewards, we have to read in context, and we've got to quit verse snatching and just going along with, oh, well, this is what I heard, and this is what the pastor taught, and this is what this particular translation says. When we see a lot of different things in different translations, it does us well to start looking at the actual Hebrew or the actual Greek so we understand what words, because here's the thing, guys, let me just say this. People are going, men and groups of people will translate things in a biased sense because of the beliefs that they already have. Many Bibles are translated to agree with certain church denominations as opposed to others. And I can tell you, the Living Bible, I think is the name of it, some Pentecostal guys that believed in the gifts of the Spirit translated that, and you can see them translating it from that perspective. But then again, the NIV is more of a Baptist Bible that don't believe in that, and they have translated it with some Baptist theology mixed in it. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So I'm going to skip on down to the very bottom of my article, and I will post. I have all of these, as well as the other things like the nephesh and the word for soul, the word for basar, meaning flesh, as well as the chahei. I have all of those highlighted and pulled up. I will post them after this video separately on a different post. But to wrap this up, what I'm going to do is just read to you. I don't have time to read all the way through verse 17, okay? I'm going to post that as well, and you can see the highlights and what I've been working from on my sheet today. But what I am going to do is read to you in verse 3 through verse 5, okay? Here we go. Every living creeper is for you. Every green vegetation that creeps on the ground is for you, even as the green herbs I give you all. Only flesh with its soul, which is the blood, you shall not eat. And surely I will require the blood of your souls. For every life I will seek at the hand of every living soul you slay. Okay, so basically what this is saying here is that he is resetting and telling Noah, you can eat all the vegetation that you want, including the vines, the things that grow on the vines. But you are not to kill animals who have soul and blood, and you are not to eat them. Okay. To wrap this up, I want to bring this to your attention. If you keep reading in Genesis chapter 9 all the way past 17, once God says, and you can have all the creeping vines, the vegetation, the first thing Noah does is go and pick grapes and get drunk. What we don't see, remember, that's important, what we don't see is when God supposedly tells Noah to start killing every living thing that moves and breathes and make it food. You don't see Noah and his sons going and killing animals and having a big cookout. No, instead, he does exactly what God tells him he can do. He goes and picks stuff off the vines and has that, and he makes wine with it. Well, listen, guys, I know I've gone long today. This is a very in-depth teaching, and I know that I did a very long series on this, and I'm putting some things together to form a book. But anyway, let me sign off here, okay? Thank you for hanging with me and watching this 17-minute video. I've gone way into overtime. But I love you, and I want the very best for you and your family and all of God's creation. I'll see you here again. Bye-bye.